Hello, I am Radagast, at your service. So, what was the topic? Oh yeah, modern wizard metaphysics, finding utility, something like that. You'll read it. But first, I guess a little update. Fortunately, Ron Van Dyke, who wasn't feeling so good and has been having some issues, is feeling a little better. I paid him a visit last night, and I think a bunch of other people must have, based on the replies to the video that he put out last night. So, and it seems to have had a good effect on him. Anyway, I just very quickly. So please give prayers to Ron. Ron really needs them. I mean, we all could use them for each other. Those of us in the team are experiencing a lot of extra effects as we try to do our work. And then I just want to very quickly change our changing world, just to kind of keep up with it. I mean, this all happened in the past 10 days. So now, I mean, it's really funny. Stuff like this is 10 days old, and it's hard to keep up with it sometimes. But in Sweden opened up the first Palestinian embassy. So that's the first embassy in the world for the Palestinian state. And then in Yemen, the U.S. embassy and many Western embassies have closed. And meanwhile, the army is still there, which I think I might have mentioned. Another one shows you that there's a little difference between embassies, which are usually spy nests, and armies. The special drawing rights, I don't know if I mentioned that, but that is about to become what is a kind of a, I guess what would be considered a 1 in the basket of currencies. I mentioned that, I believe. Langley was locked down a couple of weeks ago. Whether there was no real news other than a picture of tape across Langley. Langley is the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. And then also the DHS being defunded. I saw covered on CNN last night. And I mean, based on the once again, this is not getting very much coverage, but a little bit. There was a piece on John Boehner, basically saying that there's a problem with it, and the Democrats have a problem with it, and the White House basically commenting they're not sure how this can be worked out. CNN being provocational last night, and so that's kind of what's happening. Russia came out with its alternative to SWIFT 3 months early. So it was supposed to come out in May. I'm going to guess by May it's going to be up and running big time, because that's about the time we're going to hear about that the BRICS and the IMF are working together. All right, so metaphysics. So I got everybody seemed to enjoy the little romp across a broad spectrum of things last night, and so I know a lot of people have been working with crystals. I mean, you can hardly go anywhere that's probably would have books of the sort that you would buy without having some crystal selections. So without getting into, and the whole idea with modern wizard metaphysics is that to make it really accessible and show some utility rather than one's facility with all kinds of information that might not be particularly relevant. I did want to show some of my most of these books are out of print now because, well, for one reason, the author, and who had his own publishing company, after he wrote a book on the New World Order, didn't live a lot longer. The first of his books that came out that was really and is falling apart is Elixirs and Vibrational Healing, Volume 1, and this is so. I mean, it certainly talks about stones, and before they even get into the gem elixirs, and I'll explain what a gem elixir is in a moment. There's very much on chakras, on the various subtle bodies. It tells you really about our basic subtle anatomy, and the subtle anatomy is something that so many of us are not conversant in. It isn't so much about knowing. I mean, there are books written on this, and which I feel is great if you want to get lost in the subject and become quite authoritative on it. But sometimes when one becomes that adept at the minutia of a topic, you kind of lose utility for people. So a lot of what I try to do when I go into metaphysical things is try and just keep it simple. Whether I'm talking about polarity thinking and unity, I mean, it's not, it has to be accessible. It has to be able to be made real for you and then to work with it right away. So the whole thing, when you give people tools, anything that's new, give them something that they can kind of whack at reality with, because that's really what the tools are, is to whack at reality and test it for its validity. I did dress a little bit today. This is a little ceremony, you know, I figure we're getting into things. This is a shirt I had handmade for a specific ceremony, which I won't get into. And all the buttons and all this stuff, it's all antler. It's a nice shirt. I'm not sure how I'm really digging on the white, but today is Sunday, and Sundays have always been a favorite day of mine. I've always kind of liked the energy in the Western world around Sunday, largely owing to its Christian heritage and Sunday being kind of like that really good day of rest. So the psychic atmosphere is always, in a Western world, is a little calmer on Sunday than it is on any other day of the week. So I kind of like the psychic atmosphere of Sunday. It's one of the reasons I'm a night owl, besides the fact that I've been like that all my life. I like the psychic quietness of the deep night. First of all, phones don't ring. But even on the, you know, the psychic or fourth dimensional or energetic level, when people are awake, it's like everybody has a radio on and you can hear all these radios. And then as everybody goes to sleep, the radios go off. So late at night, you know, there's a few distant radios here and there, but it's largely peaceful. So that's why I always liked about the night. The day is like, you know, again, everybody's just got their radios on, and I find the busyness in the Western world really noisy. Cacophonous would be a better word. But again, it's not that busy has to be cacophonous, but how many people are just getting into cars to go through a ridiculous commute into traffic that tells us that all the planning is wrong, whether it's on the timing or the way the roads are. I mean, again, you know, the mornings are miserable because you have millions of people plunging into an ill-designed life system, or actually debt system. So anyway, so this is, I might read a few things out of this book. The companion book, which is really goes into great depth, is Gem Elixirs and Vibrational Healing Volume 2. This gets into the stones associated with astrology. Like there's, you know, the stone that's aligned with a planet, which one is aligned with the astrology sign itself. And one of the reasons to do this is because they give information for creating mandalas, where you actually using a plate glass of silicon, you know, of quartz crystal, but they make quartz crystal plates, and then you would use that to construct a little horoscope. That it could be your natal horoscope, or it could actually be you have a natal horoscope, and there's one placement that's a little bit difficult, where you could actually cast your natal horoscope using these stones and these techniques, and take that planet and maybe move the degrees a little bit and soften it, and this would be your own way of kind of mitigating things. It also can be dynamic when you have a challenging aspect coming up. I mean, there's all kinds of ways of that they work with that. It supposedly was used by Nostradamus, that he would meditate through the plate glass, and he would set up the planets according to the future time he wanted to look into, and then by putting his consciousness through that, he would then enter the consciousness of the time and be able to read it. So the fascinating book. Then the companion is Flower Essences and Vibrational Healing. I think this one might have come out first. And this is a book on flower essences beyond the Bach flowers. I mean, the Bach flowers are particularly a good system all by themselves. But this is a system that really gets into the minutia of things. And again, these are flower essences, and I will explain flower essences and gem elixirs in one moment. And then the final book, which is kind of nice because this is just about herbs themselves, is the spiritual properties of herbs. And it was in this book, I think it was last night I mentioned about my little hair concoction, and it was in this book that I read about witch hazel stimulating the scalp, which is what inspired me to use half witch hazel in my yarrow decoction. And so this is another out of print book, but the spiritual properties of herbs is amazing, because you can go into any store and buy the herbs, and then if you use them for their spiritual properties, it gets very interesting. Matter of fact, in the future, maybe I'll try to have a reading of something before I go into any particular thing, with the exception of ambassador related material, because that's always kind of something that has to be done. I'm going to keep out the first book, and I want to very briefly, this is going to be a little bit of a primer, because throughout my talks I mentioned chakras. So very briefly, the chakras in the most basic and utilitarian understanding, because people are going to talk about the chakras above the crown chakra, and yes, they are there, but they're until you, it's kind of like, again, people want to step outside their body before they've managed what's in here. And if everybody had these chakras managed, we'd see a very different world. So the chakras are energy centers, and I'll get more into their definition. So before I forget and start on the chakras, gem elixirs are elixirs that are made with distilled water, and the reason why distilled water is really critical in this particular way of doing things is you want completely transparent water. You want water that is just water and has no other mineral imprints in it, because you're going to be making an ethereal mineral imprint, and having other minerals in the water would kind of create less clarity, because they'd have their own signature. And so what you do with these is you take a clear bowl, and there's nice ways of cleansing. I usually just use the same distilled water to cleanse a little bit, and then a very nice clean cotton cloth, and standing it in the sun. If you dry it in the sun, that really kind of flattens it out and just cleans it, like you might clear a gemstone. And then you fill it with distilled water, and then you take your gem and you place that in the distilled water. By cleaning your fingers, whatever. I guess I usually put my stone in first, and then I put the water on top. And then you sit it in the sun, and and you really want the optimal sun. You want like somewhere between 11 and 2 or something. Not that you can't make it before or after, but again, we're talking about optimization. And so it's really when the sun is strong, and basically the times that fair-skinned people should say, the sun, that's a good time to make a gem elixir. I know for some fair-skinned people, any sun is not good, but there's, I think people know what I'm talking about. So then you would sit the stone in there for 2 hours, and as the sun is striking the stone and creating excitation, the lattice, the matrix, really, once again, matrix is a good word, again, another stolen word and shit all over, but the actual the coherent matrix that makes why stones have an affinity with different organs and different systems is because it's just a pattern. It's almost like, boom, here it is, and it doesn't deviate. And so by placing the gemstone into the water and having the sun activate that particular coherence, that coherence is released into the water, just the way you have with higher dilution homeopathy, where there is nothing of the original material in the water. And so and then after 2 hours you have what's known as a mother tincture. And from that mother tincture you can take any other, like a lot of times you nice little 1 ounce bottles is wait, let me grab one of my elixir bottles. And my wand. This is the company that actually was originally created by Gurudas, and then it was bought by Fred Rubenfeld. The name of the company is Pegasus. Okay, and this is Peridot Gem Elixir, and this is a 1 ounce bottle. And the way they would have made this one is they would have filled it with distilled water, and now they're putting a little alcohol in it because apparently they were having some problems with molds. And then you with distilled water you would put 7 drops of the mother tincture into this. And now you have the stock bottle. And it's very similar. If you use Bach remedies, very often they'll tell you put 3 drops in a bottle like this and use that as your dosage bottle, because that's another way of getting away from the alcohol, is by making another dosage bottle. And with the case of these elixirs, they usually recommend you putting 7 drops into like 8 ounces of water. When I do use that, I tend to use distilled water in all of my gem elixir things. Flower essences are made similarly. You take a bowl of cleansed water, you put your flower into it, and let it sit on top, because the flower basically floats. And then the sun releases the consciousness of the flower into the water so that it can be imbibed. That's how Bach flower remedies work. Stones are gemstones, and the minerals are holders of patterns. Like again, instructions for certain parts of organs, the organ itself, certain parts of the organ, tissue. There's all kinds of like the information of how of tissue coherence. But with flowers, we're talking about consciousness, and so it's not as specific, and it's getting into, like, people who are negative, people who might be overly positive, people who have a bad self-image. These are all psychological or states of consciousness, and those are the things that you would use flower essences for. You don't use gemstones quite so much for states of consciousness unless you have identified that the state of consciousness that you're struggling with has a specific chakra thing going on with it, and then you can start using the stones with chakras to work on that specific consciousness, which is what the next topic is. So the chakras are these 7 energy centers that have that are kind of the transducers. I mean, we are arising. We are material that is arising from a pattern. If you recall, I originally had mater is matter, pater is pattern. So the spirit is pater or pattern. So it is by having coherent patterns that we get coherent matter to cohere to the pattern. And so the chakras represent states of consciousness, but also a certain influence over organs in that general area. I'm going to be more. I really want to focus just on the states of consciousness of the chakras, because that's where we're meditating on them. When we're going to sleep and we have monkey mind, let's do chakra meditation. And so, if I think of the first chakra as our emergence into 3D, okay, we come from the other side and we come into 3D reality. And I like to think of red as an emergence from the dark creation, where before we emerge into the light. And so as you come out, there's this red, that's the nature of red, is it's almost like lava. It's reaching out. It's got this dynamism. Red rules Aries, or the ram. So we have this ramming up, and then once there's that certain kind of alertness that comes from being. I mean, that's what it is. Red is the first step of being in a new environment, which is the physical one, as opposed to the spiritual one that we're arising from. And so this is really just about security, and whatever, and so it's the most basic of securities, of knowing that you don't feel like somebody's about to pounce on you, that your environment is warm or cool enough where there's not stress, and I mean, just that whole, are you fed? I mean, it's really like, can you breathe? Are you safe? Are you fed? And this is, I mean, real survival stuff. And these are the issues. People who have money issues, it's usually coming from their root chakra, because there's a baseline insecurity about being able to sustain oneself, one's being, in the milieu or culture that they find themselves in. So, not being in sufficient monetary flow can definitely impact that chakra. And in my own private work, when I hear people neuro-linguistically, very often you'll hear those concerns. And generally, when I palpate the chakras, that is a chakra that needs energizing and cleansing. Which actually brings me to this gift I got just the other day from a magical friend of mine, and it's a piece of Hollywood, true Hollywood, okay, the traditional wand of the Druids and others. And so, he sent it to me quite raw. It's got all these different things. He's nice, smooth tip. Does this feel good in the palm of your hand? And that's another chakra that we have in the palms of our hand, the soles of our feet. And so when I'm working with crystals or anything, I'm always putting whatever it is against that center, because that's where some juice comes from. And so of course I had to get it broken in. And so I was looking, and one of the first things I was thinking about breaking off was, see, this little thing here. And when I first went to go, and it was kind of still hadn't dried out enough, and it didn't go there. And then when I went to do some work last night, I found that this little hook was particularly helpful, and with a technique that I do often with chakras, because sometimes with areas in the chakras, when you close your eyes and you can see them, you see all the junk in there, stuff, like the equivalent of phlegm or dirt in water. It's just, it's floating in there. It's, it's circulating, and it represents I'll call them toxic thoughts, because this way I don't have to go digging for a word, and it really operates as a toxin. And usually when I do kind of chakra work and I see that stuff, I usually use my hands and I will pull and flip, and again, when you're working in the fourth dimension, you're working with your imagination. So, when you're working in the fourth dimension from the true trance, you're in your three-dimensional body also. So so as I've mentioned before, our real talent is being fourth-dimensional beings, being 3D up to 4D. In other words, we're not either or, where we go in there and we operate full spectrum, up into 4D, and then we can talk about 5D once we start messing around up in 4D a lot and clearing the air up there, because boy, it is stinky. But anyway, this I found yesterday when I was doing a particular energy technique on someone, that this was very good. I'm going to point it like that for hooking in to it and allowing me to get it, and flick it, and get it, and flick it, and get it. It was very nice. Thank you, Purple One, for the gift. So the first chakra. So that's okay. So that is red. So red type of stones, and they're all, you can use ruby. I like, my birthstone is garnet. So here's one particular nice kind of lighter red, and then here's a deep red. And these are naturally occurring. They come in these kind of naturally. Like nobody made these happen. This is just the shapes as they come in. And so any of the red stones are useful. Bloodstone, even though it's usually green with little red specks, that's a green heart stone, but it also has an affinity for the root chakra. Fool's gold, because it's made of iron. But pyrite is all, because it's iron, is associated with red and the root chakra. It has that gold sun energy. So this is the whole thing about intent also, is knowing, because these, once again, what we try to do in polarity thinking is put everything into neat boxes, rather than kind of knowing their properties and then understanding that their properties are always reaching out into something else, because that's where synergy happens, where something reaches into another area and something else reaches into there, and in their combination, rather than 1 + 1 is 2, you get 1 + 1 is whatever it is, 5 maybe. 5 is a good number, right? So the first chakra, when you're really thinking, again, a nice, rich, clean, almost lava-like red. It's lit from within. It's dynamic, and it wants to move. It wants to move. And so it does. It moves up into what we call our second chakra, which is orange. Now, if you know that the next chakra is yellow, you realize that orange is red and yellow. And so you can see that, again, we see this reaching from both up and down, and that and in this reaching actually creates another center. And largely what it is that center is creativity, primarily, but as physical beings, part of our being creative means we have to be what we call procreative or sexual. So this the second chakra is very, especially in Western society, is very associated with sexuality. But it's really associated with creativity, and that's really what you want. Because if you look at it in the progression, you are being, you now feel safe, okay? And as you look up, now once again, we're waiting, the yellow, which is the intellect, is also is wanting to join. And so the way it joins is in the middle, and it produces this orange where there's now the intellect of above is feeding into the creativity. So we have this want now, oh, food, now it's time to plan, to be creative about staying warm, staying fed, staying happy. And now, of course, with the second chakra, maybe staying laid, whatever that means to you. But the main thing is the need of to be able to create and think its way ahead. And this is where we start to come in to looking out more and create, and the creative nature. I mean, music comes. I mean, after being, I guess you might start humming just to comfort yourself, and that would be part of that creativity. So that's the main thing with the with the orange area, is to really just get into the fact that that's where you're finding out how to get comfortable in being and being creative in your solutions. And carnelian is a good stone. It's a very, and I mean, I have a piece of carnelian almost like a piece of meat. And but the more orange stones, there are certain citrines, especially from Scotland, it's called cairngorm, and they're like a brownish orange. And so because of their color, they have a nice cleansing effect, because it is citrine, and citrine should always be thought of as a cleanser. And so also for that orange, calcite. And I like calcite's a sweet stone. Very, very, you touch it, you can just feel, I mean, it just almost feels moist, it's so smooth. And largely it's because it's not as hard as the other stones either. And I like calcite. Calcite to me is very less energizing and more gentle. I feel really feeds very nicely into the sweetness of creativity. Okay, so that's, and that, okay, so we kind of, okay, so that's the creativity. Now we come into the solar plexus, which is the third chakra, and it's the yellow is the energy that opens it. I mean, in the book, I could also go into the colors that close it, but I'm talking to some people who are really, this is the first time, once again, this is about being useful. This is about being able to do a meditation. So when you're bringing red into your root chakra, you would just realize that you're going to, you can just look at it, and if you have any worries there, that's a good time to kind of meditate on what created that, where is this coming from. Usually it's situational, but a lot of times it's perceptional, and sometimes it's perceptional situational. And then with the orange, you really, it's all about creativity. I mean, it really is. That's also the beginning of emotions. We start to create emotions, although we would be, as I've said many times, we're better served by feelings. Feelings are the real information. Emotions are feelings that are now getting too energized and often getting too mixed up with the third chakra when the ideas start filling in the gaps. Because when a feeling kind of presents itself, you're really supposed to just try to figure it out based on the information you're getting. And if you don't have an answer, don't give a bad answer. Like just know you don't know and get more information. But the third chakra, the mental chakra, is really about mental. I mean, it's meant to be pure intellect, but it does, because of its nature and because it was part, in many ways through its color, was part of the creation of the second chakra. As much as we'd like to, if we're not vigilant, we will have a constant mixing up of mind with feelings. And when I say, and that's where the emotions come in, because they mix, as opposed to feelings being in their own domain, needing their own validity in their own purity of the information, the deepest information from the most psychic parts of you. And then to have the intellect look in on them. Very often what we have a lot of time doesn't look in and try to answer like a smarter brother would for a younger brother or sister. And it gets caught up in sympathy, sympathetic, taking the ride, and when meanwhile the intellect is not supposed to take emotional rides. It's supposed to help the feelings with understanding, because that's the feelings just have the feelings, and it's like, what does my feeling mean? Well, we have to do that. And emotions are, again, they just get into all kinds of turmoil and confusion and kerfuffle. Good word. So the third chakra, my favorite stone for the third chakra, because it picks up, because it's constantly getting into emotional assistance, with its assistance in emotional tornadoes, it needs, to me, to be cleansed almost more than anything else. And the best cleansing stone, in my opinion, is citrine. And that's when I actually like tumbled citrines. I like the rounder nature over the chakras, as opposed to ones that have terminations on them, because those are good for direction. And that's why in last night's thing I said I like little citrine clusters, because you can just invert them and then they can be directed in there. With a tumbled stone, you want to look for a nice color. I mean, to me, the ones that are the palest, the ones that look almost like they're clear, but somehow there's been captured sunlight in the stone. That captured sunlight, I've found it to be the most cleansing of all the stones. But the more yellow, the more cleansing. Just look for something that just says like that, like a lemon. It's almost like you're taking, like the cleansing nature of lemon, both scent-wise, and there is in the peel there is some bacterial things, and you're just kind of freshening. You don't want to shut anything down. You want it dynamic and working, but you don't want it cluttered. So, and citrine. Here, let me read citrine. Okay, why don't we just pick citrine for our reading for here today. Oh, it's in the quartz, right? When they break it down into the quartz and the various ones. Okay. Citrine. Okay, remember now, this is for the elixirs. So, but this will have some application to the stone, obviously. And pardon me while I turn around and get some light here. Here we find an influence on the heart, kidneys, liver, and muscles. On the cellular level, we find stimulation of general tissue regeneration. There can be a complete regeneration in the circulatory system, particularly the red and white corpuscles, with mild influence on the lymphatics and cell tissues of the flesh brain. This elixir notably removes toxemia from the body, such as with appendicitis or when there is gangrene. Citrine may also be indicated for intestinal toxemia and when the body has turned on itself and become toxic. Citrine stimulates general healing with the body physical and mildly eases all of the miasms. That's another term we'll get to. All forms of background radiation, especially toxic forms such as radium, are treatable with citrine. Antitoxic nutrients such as vitamins A, C, and E, selenium, and zinc are better assimilated. Self-destructive tendencies, particularly of a suicidal nature, are alleviated. As a thought amplifier, citrine should be used with meditation to rejuvenate the physical form and eliminate toxic thought forms. There is a rekindling of confidence in the self, the true inner self, through increased contact with the higher self. Increased alignment between the astral, emotional, mental, soul, and spiritual bodies results, and meridians and nadis are stimulated. The base, heart, and throat chakras are also activated. And then it says use citrine externally with an atomizer, which is really brilliant. I mean, if you can make up an elixir and put it in a spray bottle and spray it on your aura, that's a really good one. Actually, one of the best aura sprays I ever made was a combination of rose water with, here's another, smoky quartz, because smoky quartz is very energizing, and a lot of times I would take it to rehearsal with me. When I got a little tired, I would just spray some smoky quartz in my aura, and I would feel quite energized, and the rose just made it real sweeter. And rose water is a very good medium for using real rose water, for putting things like gemstone elixirs in them. And this is a Sunday. Oh, this is my German Purity Beck's non-alcoholic beer. I hope I don't burp. Oh, boy, that's so good. Anyway, so up to the third chakra. Fourth chakra, the heart. Now, this is the reason we want to clear all this, because you really don't get into the heart until you navigate the lower chakras. And once you get into the heart, you don't have to worry about, I mean, so many people want to do this stuff. The heart is it. That's where gnosis is. That's where compassion is. That's where wisdom is. This is it. The heart is it. Once you get there, you want to know about the other stuff, but you only begin to function in society and function as an autonomous, compassionate being, and you have to get access to your heart to be able to walk and not that walk. And so the color is green, and I like a really just a beautiful emerald green, not too dark, but really rich. But can also go into like almost like a nice leaf green. Again, you want a rich green. You don't want it too yellow. You want it to be very much in the green spectrum. You don't want it in the blue either. I mean, you want the richest green you can get in that really good green spectrum, which of course is a combination of the yellow and the blue. And so the stones, I like emerald, and you can, but there's a stone like aventurine. That's a good green stone. The aforementioned bloodstone is a good stone. Ruby, and again, they don't have to be gemstones. I mean, in case you didn't watch last night, I mean, this is one of my little emeralds. I do have a a nice cabochon. This is a Colombian emerald, and you probably see how really dark it is now. If I kind of light it up, side light it, there you can kind of get the color a little bit better. This is, this is a gem quality emerald, but I only use that kind of for certain meditations. I am more than content with these other emeralds I picked up for $1 each. So ruby, the green stones, aventurine, stones for working in the heart. The gold, the element gold, is good for the heart. So those are just, and I really want you to kind of work there, and that's what you do in chakra meditations. You kind of work the red and kind of try to find that you got it settled there. Work the orange, get it settled, and just part of it can just be if you can just imagine the colors, and that color is clear, and you're not seeing any boogers in there, and just. You just imagine it, and it's nice. Put a nice spin on it, a nice counterclockwise spin. They are kind of like vortexes that spin down into what looks like the spinal column, and from those two tornadoes, they kind of come out the front and the back into twin cones. And so the green for there. I'm getting a little bit long, so but I got the bottom ones were the most important ones. That's why they got the most time. The throat is really, so many people do not speak their truth, and the people the population that is probably the most caught into not speaking their truth because of decades and decades of not being heard are women. And interestingly enough, the throat chakra, the blue chakra, is the chakra associated with the thyroid gland, and inability to speak what one's truth on a consistent basis can affect the thyroid. And in women who tend to have almost epidemic levels of hypo or low thyroid activity, I believe that has been a result of a lot of biting of one's tongue. And even in today's world, where women might seem to have a greater voice, very often, especially in the worlds of power, they basically, if they don't speak with a man's voice, with the things that need to be heard, they aren't heard. And so their real voice, even if they're speaking, even if they're heard, even if they're able to give rules, it probably wasn't coming from their heart, from the heart, that would have informed the throat in a way. And in a way, then you can get dysfunction. It's not a hard and fast rule, it's an observation. But the throat is blue, and this is it is communication. And I've had some disagreements, but as far as and also in my readings, this is really where the higher will resides. The will, the part of the decision making that might seem to belong to the third chakra, which is the mental body, which would be a decision maker. But the decisions of the mental body are the lower will, kind of based on decisions of what the root chakra and the second chakra need as perceived needs. I mean, there's a whole complete system in those first three chakras as far as consciousness go, and that's where most people are operating from. Most people are operating on the first three chakras, which makes them not high performing. I'll be kind. So this is really where your higher will forms, and of course it's very interesting that where the will forms is in the voice, so that will can be shared, because a will in your head isn't much, it won't get much done. It's being able to transmit, to communicate your will in the form of ideas, barking orders, if that's for some of you. But it's really, I mean, the style is less important than the fact of what it is, and then of course then you have to use it properly. So that's the third chakra, the will, and finding your voice, and it's high. This is really the higher mind. I mean, this is the mental. This is the third chakra is the mental chakra, but this is the mind above the heart. This is after you get gnosis, after you have wisdom, after you have compassion. Well, now we have different kinds of information for a higher mind to deal with. Then I need to be warm, I need to be fed, and I need to get laid, which is, or I need to figure out how some answer to my problem, which is really the more animal functioning aspect of our being. It's at the heart level that we really become human, and then it's at the throat level that we start thinking at those higher levels and start communicating those higher ideals. And of course, that's we'll start finding freedom and liberation. And then you have the sixth chakra, which is depending on different systems which one it is, but it's basically considered to be the third eye in most systems, not all, and which has its resonance with the pineal gland, and the pineal gland has its own visual properties and an optic nerve, and so that really what we're looking at with the third eye is a kind of a clairvoyance, the ability to gaze and imagine the sight of the fourth dimension. Really, it's kind of the eye. These are our eyes for navigating the third dimension, and this one is for help navigating into the higher dimensions. And it is associated with imagination. But when you realize, when I spoke of some of my earlier duality things, the universe is being imagined into existence. I mean, that's what it is. It's creative. It's a creative endeavor. It's always moving out. It's a dance. It's a dance between creative forces, destructive forces, and sustaining forces. The nature of the dance is really how you sustain it. How is it? Is it kind of a rough sustain? Is it a very mild sustain? Is it a dynamic sustain? So that's it. And this one here is indigo. Oh, some stones. I'm sorry. I should give you some quick stones for here. The blue stones. I like lapis lazuli because it has cleansing properties. Azurite is a very good stone. Blue howlite is generally dyed, so don't use howlite for here. I mean, there's some really beautiful blue apatite or gentle, kind of gentle apatite. You can use some aquamarine there, but that's really a thymus blue-green thing, and I left that out because I'm trying to keep it simple. Remember, we want it to be useful. And so the blue stones. I don't have to show you every stone, I guess, especially since my here's my lapis lazuli, but it's not all polished up, so it's really all kind of skanky from being in my pocket a lot and things like that. But that's lapis. Azurite is beautiful. But now over here these are indigo stones, and the stone I like the most is sapphire, and this is a rough sapphire that I own. I have a little piece that I'm not going to pull out that's really small, and it kind of has a little concave point that fits right over here. So when I lay down, sometimes I'll just lick it, stick it, and use that to kind of feed my clairvoyance a little bit. And then you have the crown chakra, which is purple, and that's cosmic consciousness. That's opening to the in and out that we are, because we're rising up and going that way, but there's also a feed in this way. And so you could kind of, that's kind of our opening, the crown chakra. It's basically purple. I like to see it with a little white and gold in it. I think those are good colors with the crown chakra. And it's hard to beat amethyst as a crown chakra stone. The quartz stones are amazingly, that's why they're so why there's so much of them in their different colors, because they're kind of like the go-to stone. They do a lot of things very well, and then the other stones are kind of like getting into more specialty. It's almost like the basic colors of quartz are like the 7 crayon box. So you have everything you need there, but if you need to get into finer detail about things, well, then you need to go to the 24 or whatever number of boxes they have there, and the other stones kind of start representing those in ways of colors. And then when you start getting into real study, like with the gem elixirs, then you start seeing how the stones align with specific systems, specific organs, specific chakras. The nad eyes are energy, are more. I don't really want to confuse anybody. It's part of the energy system. It's almost like the energy nervous system. And miasms are largely what homeopathy is a language in homeopathy. These are kind of generational illnesses. These are kind of fourth dimensional illnesses that rest on people. Like we have a petrochemical miasm on the planet from using petrochemicals so much, and that has negative effects on us. We have a radiation miasm on the planet. We have a syphilitic miasm. So there's all these different kinds of things that, because of their being present as stresses on our body for a few generations, there actually becomes an imprint. It starts to get genetic, and these genetic type of propensities to these other energies that makes us more liability on non-specific diseases. These are the miasms, and these are the things. When I read about citrine, it mentioned about clearing miasms. Well, that's what a miasm is. And even if you're looking at a town and then there's kind of like a real cloud and you really can't make things out, you might say, oh, there's a miasm over the town. It just kind of means hazy and not optimal and junky and cluttered, and the air's not clean. All that all that kind of symbology. So I think we made it. Okay, so. We covered a little changing world. We mentioned Ron in your prayers. Please put Ron Van Dyke in your prayers. The ambassador can use it. I mean, anybody. If you like anybody in the team you like, send them some prayers. Dave Schmidt is definitely one of us, and he's in China, and he can use the prayers also, and pray for each other, of course. And so I think that'll be today's video. Before all else, I see the God within you.